Hi everyone, I got asked to review Midnight Memories for some reason. Somebody wanted me to do that and I thought I would love to do that. So I figured that's all I'd play of the album. I think overall the album's kind of interesting from the perspective of a band that has had the most influence this time around on the writing. They've written more than they've ever written before. In particular Louis and then Liam having written more of the songs. I'm not sure what their involvement in the songwriting process was, whether they were doing lyrics, whether they were writing lyrics and tunes, and then other people were just coming in and kind of adding things to it or rewriting, or whether they were given songs that they then slightly modified or whatever. I think co-writing's a really particular thing, and I don't think all of the details are available about who wrote what and what level each member of the band had in the involvement of writing these songs. So I think it's really hard to say explicitly, you know, Louis wrote this particular song, and I'm gonna make some assumptions, but I don't know for sure what level of involvement they had in the writing of each song. So I just kind of want to preface everything by saying that. I think overall it's interesting. I think it's an album in transition, and I think it's a really strong example of a band in transition from what they were to some possible future directions that they might go in, and that's interesting to listen to. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite thing to listen to, but it's interesting, and I think it is worth listening to because of that transition. I've listened to the album a couple of times. I've listened to the first album that they did maybe once, and I've listened to the second album that they did a couple of times as well. And it's definitely a maturation of their process, and I think that's really interesting. But I don't know that I actually love every moment on this album, and I certainly don't love all of the songs. There are a couple of songs that are real standouts for me, and they're the kind of more folky songs. That's because that's the kind of music that I like. The kind of stadium rock stuff, I could take it or leave it. Some of it I've really enjoyed, but others I'm just like, I kind of get what you're doing here, but it's not the kind of music that I would regularly listen to. I think it's interesting for me because One Direction is not the kind of music that I would regularly listen to, but I've enjoyed it in terms of it being kind of really decent or all the way to really good, really decent to really good pop music. And I like pop music, and so that's kind of where I fall in that. Whereas this album is much closer to music that I would listen to if I wasn't interested and invested in what's going on with One Direction. The standout songs for me are, I actually like Story of My Life. As somebody who plays music, it's fun to play on the piano and sing. It's a fun song. I know that there's been some conversation around the kind of misogynistic possible elements in that song. I personally am not convinced that it's as bad as it was made out to be, but I acknowledge what people's responses to that song have been, and I am kind of aware of that. Happily stands out to me as being a really accomplished piece of work, and it's definitely one that I would listen to and would make me go, oh, who is this band? I want to buy their album. It's interesting that when I say that it's a band in transition, I kind of mean that they're pushing in two, I'm gonna say it again, directions. They are though, they're pushing in two different directions. One's towards indie folk and one's towards indie rock. And I think that there's a folk rock kind of crossover that they could do, but I don't actually think they've managed that yet. I think they've gone and they've done both. They've done both quite successfully, but I don't know how well they sit next to each other. Some of the songs really do sit well next to each other. I've seen it reviewed by other people, and I've seen the conversation that surrounds it, but Strong and Happily do sit quite well side by side as a indie rock, indie folk, and the kind of transition between those I think has been done well, but others is a bit jarring. I think Little Black Dress and Midnight Memories itself are kind of awkwardly jimmied into the album, or maybe it's me and they're awkwardly jimmied into an album that I would rather was more like Happily, more like Story of My Life. They're the kinds of things that I would rather be listening to, and so they're the ones that stand out to me and make me go, why isn't the rest of the album like this? But it'll be really interesting to see kind of which way they go, whether it's more towards the indie folk or whether it's more towards the indie rock. My preference is kind of trying to get them to marry up a little bit better. Obviously, you've got 5 unique voices that you have to cater for in that group, where they're starting to write their own music, they're starting to have a contribution into the creative direction that their music is going, and I think working out how that will all balance out is going to be really interesting. I really like You and I. That's a great song. It's fun to play on the piano. I've been trying to learn it because I'm sad like that. Don't Forget Where You Belong. It's very sweet. It's a very touching song, and I think it's very personal to the 5 of them, and I thought that was it was a really lovely piece of music for them. Strung, as I said, really well-rounded, lovely piece of music. I don't love it as much as I love Happily, but yeah, they kind of sit well together, so I've been listening to them kind of always together. Right Now, I really like. Zayn's voice in that one is magic. Zayn's voice in the entire album is just magical and amazing, and I'm constantly jealous of what he can do, and it makes me sad and depressed. Little Black Dress could pass. A lot of them, Little White Lies could pass. Those kinds of things. It's okay, I guess. It's kind of that indie rock. Some of it sounds really early 2000s. Diana sounds like the end of a John Hughes movie, and I kind of like that about it. I like that it has that sound. I haven't really listened to the lyrics. I don't know why there's been such negative reaction to that song, because it kind of gives me this giddy joy at how silly it is, and how much I want to see it at the end of a John Hughes movie. Maybe that's just me. Best song ever. I saw a couple of people saying that it shouldn't be on this album. It's like a Take Me Home song, and it kind of is. There's other elements of it that are more this album, and then there are there are parts of that song which are more previous albums, and that's kind of okay. Yeah, I think overall, it's a good listen. I've liked it more as I listened to it more. I really liked it the first time I listened to it, and then the next time I listened to it, I was like, I like a lot of this, but I don't like some of it. And then the more I've listened to it, I've gone, actually, this is okay, that's alright, there's some complexity here. I tend to respond more to complexity in music and where it's clever and where they've used interesting chords, particularly as I try to start playing it. In that sense, it's weird that I like Happily so much. I think that Happily is the standout song for me on the album. I just think I love it. It's exactly the kind of music that I would listen to regularly. But when I've gone to play it on the piano, it's like 3 chords and it's super boring to play. It's not 3, it's 4, but it's super boring to play on the piano, but when you sing it, you still get that feeling, and it's really exciting. The only other things that I really want to say, Zayn's voice is just insane. Insane, and I really, all kudos to him for his incredible singing. I just can't believe that he can do what he does, and all the props to him. I've always liked Harry's voice. Is kind of that husky, gravelly thing. I'm a bit worried he's gonna get vocal nodes because he's pushing all the time, and he's probably putting his voice under considerable stress. That's worrying, but I don't know. Maybe he's not. It's working at the moment. He's got a great voice. Liam always can sing. He's kind of a bit middle of the roady for me. He's got a good voice, definitely, and he's certainly got a lovely falsetto, but you know, it's good. It supports what it needs to be. Niall, big improvement from last time. Louis has improved consistently over the course of the albums and over the tours. He gets a lot of criticism for having a weak voice, but I don't actually think that's the case. I don't think he has a weak voice. My personal kind of take on things is that he has the voice that is easiest for girls to sing along to, and when that's the market that you're targeting to, it's really important in a boy band to have a voice that's easy to find and that kind of loops everyone in and allows everyone to sing along. his is that voice more often than any other a voice is. That's why it sounds so weird when his voice is missing from the 5-part harmonies, is because there's not that thing that helps the regular person, someone who's not musical or not a singer, there's not that thing that helps them kind of lock in and connect. I also think Louis's writing is getting there. There's a few bits that I thought, that's kind of a clumsy lyrical construction, but that's alright as well. A lot of it was great. A lot of it was really great. And they've talked about it being about things that are relevant to their lives, and that's really awesome to see. It's really nice to hear that they're kind of mining their own experiences in order to create better music. I think that Louis is showing the most potential in that area, and maybe Harry as well, as he kind of continues to mine things that are interesting. I'm not sure how this album is about their experiences, and I'm not sure exactly what relates to their lives and what doesn't relate to their lives, because I don't know what they exactly wrote in each particular song, and it's hard to make that kind of call. I think overall though, it's actually a pretty solid album, and I've been pretty impressed listening to it, and I will continue to listen to it. And I think that's a pretty good thing, is that I want to keep listening to it because I've enjoyed listening to it so far. If I was to give it a rating out of 5 stars, I would probably give it 3.5 to 4, getting really, really close to the kind of music that I personally would normally listen to, but not there yet. And that makes me actually really excited to see what album 4 and 5 might look like. That's my review of Midnight Memories, and I hope that it was in some way both informative and ridiculously entertaining. Don't forget, we've got our Pozible campaign going at the moment. If you'd like to donate to that campaign, you can do so at our Pozible page, which I'm sure will be linked somewhere that you can click on. We'd really appreciate those donations. That helps us make the documentary. It helps us get to the countries that we need to get to talk to fans, and that's really, really important. If any of you are thinking of buying me a Christmas present, you could instead contribute to the campaign. That's an option. I hope you've enjoyed everything that I've said.